Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Comic books are getting killed. The largest comic book independent distributor, Diamond Comic Distributors, who I have sold a lot of comic books to over the years, is filing for bankruptcy. They've already filed for bankruptcy. They are selling off pieces of the company. They're not going to restructure the company and keep operating not the way the press releases look. It looks a lot like they are tearing the company apart piece by piece. They have assets of something between $50 to $100 million, and they have debts of something from $50 to $100 million. My wild guess, they're upside down probably by about $20 to $30 million, which is to say, they probably owe, and this is just a guess, it's not exactly in the numbers, something like $20 or $30 million more than what they have in assets. They do have a couple of other divisions that they own, like Alliance Games, that could be worth substantial money. So maybe when everything winds up getting torn apart, everything winds up getting sold off and liquidated, there might be some money left over so that everybody can get the money that they're owed. The 30 largest creditors, the 30 largest companies that are owed the most money, are owed something like $30, $31 million. But there are over 1,000 creditors here, are over 1,000 entities that are owed money. A lot of them are small independent publishers, I am sure. Those guys are going to be waiting a while to get paid until all of this bankruptcy stuff can work its way out. Why'd this company go bankrupt? A couple of reasons. One, and this goes all the way back to the 1990s. According to Chuck Rosansky, who owns MileHighComics.com, who has been in the industry since the 1970s, when Marvel got taken over by Ronald Perlman and they decided to raise their prices, within a year, they had raised their prices by something like 110%. And yes, this goes back to like 1993. But the effect on that was that instead of people buying all the comics that Marvel was producing, people started to pick and choose what they would carry from Marvel. The margins were good. Overall, Marvel was making more money for Marvel, but it cut down on impulse purchases in the store. People were not buying, oh, I'll buy this, I'll try that. They also weren't buying Valiant books. It hurt Valiant's numbers, at least by 35%. They had to cut back on their pre-orders substantially and buy a lot less comics because for some reason, Marvel decided they needed those extra profits. They wanted to make some money. And by doing that, they shrunk the overall business because they had high prices. High prices always slows down activity. It's friction for the customer. If you're going to publish comics, you want to think about having affordable price points, even if it means having a low-price digital edition. Not that it doesn't cut into your little profit margins. Yeah, it does. But you have to think about building an audience if you're actually putting out stuff that's worth reading. For my next publishing projects, I'm going to have free versions, not of the whole book, but at least versions where you can kind of try it out and get a free preview of something like 10 pages. I'll have more on that in the future. Then Marvel Comics went ahead and decided they could do what they did in the cosmetics industry. Cosmetics? Yes, Ron Perlman, the billionaire who bought Marvel, also owned Revlon. And one of the things that worked well for them with Revlon was they bought up distribution and they were able to vertically integrate, meaning that they could own the distributor as well as the manufacturer. And by doing that, they could push out some of their competitors and also get some additional profit and additional efficiencies in operating. So they did that and said, you know something, we could just do this in comic books. They didn't actually go and visit this distributor that they bought out. They bought out a company called Heroes World. Heroes World themselves should have known, run by a nice guy named Ivan, that this wasn't going to be good for the industry. I don't know why they did the deal, but they did do the deal. When they did that deal, DC Comics saved the industry by doing a deal exclusively with Diamond. It took a little while, but they did do that deal, and DC then created stability in the industry. But at the same time, because Marvel had so much market share and was so unable to distribute its comics through comic stores because Heroes World was not set up to be some big national operation, they were like pretty much the New Jersey area and a couple of other states around there. And Marvel didn't know what it was doing, trying to scale up and reach the entire country to sell books. independent comic stores were hurt really badly, and many of them went out of business just because of that. After that, a lot of independent comics and comic book stores were damaged by Image Comics. Yep, Image Comics. Those guys. They shipped a lot of books very late, sometimes like a year late, and they would just dump these books on these stores, and the stores were buying them non-returnable. This affected my publishing company quite a bit. There were new policies that were put on independent publishers like mine saying, hey, you can't be so late. You can't be more than 30 days late, or you have to ship your books returnable, or we're going to cancel the orders. And because Image Comics was so late, because they wouldn't deliver their books on time, they didn't have that priority. Independent publishers were severely damaged. We had to take risks that we could not afford to take. And then on top of that, comic book stores were damaged because stores were getting books that there were no more customers for because the customers bought the things like a year ago. They didn't buy it yesterday, and the industry was changing. That was a time that comics should have been returnable for everybody, and publishers should have collaborated with the distributors so that they could take books away and take them off the market if it's not what customers wanted. When you're publishing comics in a quantity of, say, 1 million copies, but even when you're publishing in a quantity of, say, 10,000 copies, 50,000 copies, smaller numbers but substantial numbers, the extra couple of issues only costs a few cents to print. Could be 10 cents, could be 15 cents. For something that you're selling at the time for like $1, $1.50, there was a lot of room to try to work with the marketplace and make things work. But people weren't collaborating and doing that at the time, and it just kept taking more and more of a toll on the industry. Recently, in the last few years, we've seen DC Comics and Marvel Comics producing comics that support ideological agendas instead of just giving customers what they want. And they feel like they're doing it for a good reason. But it's not a good reason. And in addition to high prices, you create a lot more friction for a customer if they're forced to buy things that they know they don't really like, but they've been collecting for a while. Ultimately, more and more product becomes unsaleable and stores go out of business. And when a store goes out of business, that tests the strength of the distributor. The distributor has to absorb that loss. Not in every case. There are different distribution deals with different publishers that sometimes will share part of that loss. But when you lose distribution because a store closes because they don't have a viable business selling things that people actually want, you close off distribution opportunities. You close off the opportunity to find another customer or to keep a customer. And then beyond the woke comics, when COVID hit, Diamond Comic distributors stopped distributing comics on their own accord. That really upset DC Comics. DC Comics' opinion was, well, we want to still ship our comics, so we'll make deals with other people to ship our comics. That was within their right. But that started the domino effect of other publishers moving further and further away from dealing with this major independent distributor, Diamond Comic Distributors, to the point where Diamond lost more than 80% of their volume. And if you're in business and you lose 80% of your sales that you've been having, that you've been counting on, that you've been expecting to have, you're going to go out of business. And that's ultimately now what's happened to Diamond. Coming from Cosmic Book News, Diamond Comics declares bankruptcy, major asset sell-off underway. They are selling every piece, every division of Diamond Comic Distributors. They're getting rid of all of it. That's what it looks like. Diamond Comic Distributors has announced it has filed for bankruptcy and that all of its assets are on the table to be sold off. The bankruptcy chapter that they filed for is Chapter 11 for reorganization versus Chapter 7 for liquidation. Liquidation is, we're selling all the assets. We're getting rid of everything. We want this thing destroyed. Chapter 11 is, hey, we're going to stay in business. Let's reorganize. But very often, a reorganized Chapter 11 turns into a Chapter 7. When they're selling off multiple divisions of the company and they've lost more than 80% of their volume, they're not going to stay in business after this. There are tactical reasons and legal reasons for doing things this way. That's why they're doing it this way. Diamond Comic Distributors is going to continue in business. They're fulfilling orders as they've been fulfilling orders, but only up until the point that the bankruptcy is over. Chuck Parker, president of Diamond Comic Distributors, let store owners know what they're up to and what's going on. Here's what he said, quote, "We remain committed to pursuing offers for all Diamond lines of business. He also said that Diamond will remain open and be fulfilling all orders. According to the bankruptcy documents, Diamond lists 30 unsecured creditors. That's because it's their 30 top creditors. This is their list of 30 top creditors. We'll check it out a little bit. This list of top creditors doesn't include all creditors. This only includes the 30 largest creditors, and it also points out whether or not the debt is disputed. A debt is disputed when the company who owes the money or the company who is owed the money disputes the amount or the validity of the debt. There could be a disagreement about whether or not it's an unsecured debt or a secured debt, like what your priority should be in getting paid on the debt or the amount of the debt or if it's valid or not. When I looked at these debts and I saw the amounts, I was surprised at how low the debts are because Diamond has been known for doing a lot of business, a lot of revenue. And if you're in distribution and you're selling a lot, you've got to have a lot of debts. These are severe debts, but they're not so severe that Diamond couldn't have figured out a way to kind of keep things going the way I look at this, but it looks like they've been losing money for a while, and as they lose volume, there was just kind of no point to continue because it's not like their major publishers were going to come back to them. So if they're going to just continue to lose money year after year, it's just more of a liability to operate the company than there's any kind of benefit to operating the company. But the major publishers that pulled away from this company killed this company. They owe over $9 million to Random House, over $4 million to Bandai, almost $1 million to Wizards of the Coast, another $1 million to Hasbro. They owe $1.7 million to Disney Consumer Products. And the list goes on and on. What I'm mostly concerned about is the people that are below these top 30 that are independent, smaller companies that were counting on getting this money, that they're at least not going to see this money for a few months, if they see it at all. Here's what the president of Diamond had to say. Diamond Comic Distributors today announced that it filed a voluntary petition for relief under Chapter 11 of the United States Bankruptcy Code in the United States Bankruptcy Court to facilitate the restructuring of its business. As part of the restructuring process, Diamond has received a $39 million stalking horse bid from an affiliate of Universal Distribution for Alliance Game Distributors. If they sell that division, Alliance Games, to Universal Distribution, it will have to be approved by the bankruptcy court. He goes on to say they've received commitments for up to $41 million in debtor-in-possession financing from JPMorgan Chase that will be used to fund post-petition operating expenses and ensure adequate working capital to meet its obligations to associates and suppliers. This is not that complicated, but I want to explain it because a lot of people don't understand it. Debtor-in-possession financing is a special kind of financing that a bank is willing to give because here's why. They filed a bankruptcy on January 14th. And when they filed the bankruptcy, they got bankruptcy protection. Protection from what? Protection from everyone they already owe money to. So they supposedly have debts of anywhere from $50 million to $100 million. I'm guessing it's probably around $80 million. Doesn't matter. It's a lot of million. So why would you lend that company more money? Because they have money coming in and they don't need to pay the money that they owe. That will be settled as part of the bankruptcy. So if you go ahead and you owe, let's say, $80 million to someone and you have money coming in all the time because people owe you money, it's not really a risk to loan money to that company, even if they're in bankruptcy, but really especially because they're in bankruptcy. Why no risk? Because every dollar that you get in can be secured and go towards paying off that money that's part of the debtor-in-possession financing. So the people that are owed money from January 14th and prior don't get paid. They have to wait. That's what the protection is about. The people that loan new money to the company because they're in a bankruptcy status from January 15th on will get paid, and the backup money to pay them is going to be provided by that debtor-in-possession loan from Chase. Eventually, when all the divisions are sold and all that stuff is all taken care of, then the people who were unsecured creditors will get paid. They may get paid all the money that they're owed. I hope they do. But the companies that are these small companies that are owed somewhere between $20 million and $50 million, they may only get a few cents on the dollar, which could also put some of those companies out of business. As it stands, it looks like this is going to put a lot of comic book stores out of business. Brian Hibbs has since the 1990s been writing a column talking about what it's like to be a comic book retailer. And he explained, this is very bad for the industry. Here's what Brian Hibbs had to say. There are a lot of people who are actively rooting for Diamond Comics to fail. Well, now your wishes appear to be coming true as Diamond files for Chapter 11. And this is going to be truly dire news for the direct market. That is, comic book stores and the publishers who rely on selling to those comic book stores. He continues, at least in the short and medium term. Say goodbye to most smaller publishers, and so long for the right opportunities for a majority of smaller and unproven creators. Never ever forget that the blame for this falls directly upon DC Comics, and we should never forget this or ever withhold that blame. And he's referring to when DC Comics pulled all of their comics out of Diamond distribution because of the COVID situation, and Diamond decided to close down their operations because of COVID. That may have been a mistake. That's what they did. DC responded. All the other major publishers responded. And that brought us to this point. That's Brian's point, and he's right about that. Brian says best wishes for Steve Jeppy, the owner of Diamond Comic Distributors, as well as all the staff at Diamond, and my most fervent prayers for creators and my fellow retailers that we're all going to be able to navigate this disruption to the market. He wants people to know this as well. Hey, Penguin Random House, that is the major distributor now for comic books in the United States, does not want any accounts smaller than they already have. And Lunar, another distributor, besides being the primary retail competition for comic book retailers, because they also sell directly through their own discount service, directly to comic book consumers, is, in his opinion, really, really bad at their jobs, and in his personal estimation, could not possibly handle adding more vendors. 2025 is going to be a nightmare. The result of Diamond's bankruptcy is going to be very bad for independent comic book stores and independent publishers. This will not put Amazon out of business. This will not put Marvel, DC, Image, or any of the other major companies out of business. Everyone else who was trying to get into the business or stay in the business but wasn't a big company isn't going to be in good shape. It's going to hurt a lot of independent publishers and independent retailers, and I don't like that because it's also going to hurt the fans, it's going to hurt creators. It puts people out of the business who could otherwise be in the business, reach a large audience, make a career out of this, and bring comics to the next level. You can't do that anymore through comic book stores. You can do the best you can through crowdfunding, but it's always a reduced audience. Even the biggest crowdfunding are still very small numbers. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.